Hello everybody, how are you? How was your night? It was great, yeah, okay. I'm glad you came. So you can see all the features of R21, Cinema 4D, and hello Internet today. I'm glad you're here as well, and I would like to show you our incredible new release. Fancy sound as well, cost me 1,000 euros. But for you, I do everything. So, before we start with the features, I would like to show you some renderings that we got over the year, and it's only really a few. We really get a lot of renderings from our customers and from different fields, and it's so incredible. Character, also design, product design, and architecture. Oh, look at this! This is incredible. It's hair. It's Cinema 4D hair. It's like my sister. Oh, she must be cute. He said it looks like his sister. You're a nice family. Yeah, actually I could go through here if I put all the renderings in there that I got during the year. We could go on here like for 1 hour. It's really incredible. This is our new splash screen, and you now also have a license manager user account, and you can of course sign in there, and it can easily be created. And the great thing with this is that you can also free your license from anywhere. Like when you're at a friend at a different office and you're like, oh my god, I need to use Cinema 4D, you simply go to your mobile phone, you deactivate the license. The computer at home is free now, and you have the license for another computer, so you can activate it on a different one. You don't have to go home for that. Oh, this was the quick start dialog that opens up when you open Cinema 4D. You've got your recent files and tutorials and everything. Of course, you can click that away, that it never pops up again, but if you want it, let it stay there. And here is the new interface. It's a little bit darker. We reorganized nearly everything. Now it really makes more sense. Everything is there where it should have been many years ago. You have to get used to it actually. If you're used to, oh, I have to click here and then it's there. Some things have changed and moved, but it takes you just a few times, and then you notice, okay, this way makes way more sense that this deformer is here and this is there and stuff like that. You can also see we have a darker viewport. I'll tell you more about that later. And some icons also have to be changed to look nicer and crisper, because now we have HiDPI support for Windows. And we also have, this is for both Mac and Windows, high resolution viewport. And that means the viewport now has 4 times the resolution. It's really crisp and sharp. And this is for both Mac and Windows, because on Mac we already had icons and everything for many years. It was easier to implement, and now it's finally there for Windows for high resolution monitors. You would think 4 times more pixels would make it slow. No, but what we wrote underneath even makes it faster. It's 4 times sharper and even faster than before. Then text with better readability, Windows only, like I said. On Mac we had that already. Crisp, non-fuzzy icons. High resolution picture viewer, also Windows only. And here is an example. And you have to imagine, you see a lot of pixels here. That's because I'm zoomed in a lot to show you really the difference. This is R20 and before, and this is R21. It's the same zoom factor. And it's really way sharper. So, some managers also benefit from the speed ups. Like I said, we did something underneath. And for example, this is a feature where a friend of mine told me this is like the best feature of R21 for him, because it's so fluid. The timeline is now so fluid. When you do character animation, for example, selecting keyframes and moving all of them at once or resizing the whole timeline sometimes could be sluggish. Now it's fluid. On PC, R20, 36 frames per second. On R21, 59 frames per second. In this example, it can differ from scene to scene. On Mac, here in this scene at least, even more. R20, 19 frames per second, R21, 79. That's 4 times faster. With the same hardware. Because we wrote stuff underneath, under the hood. That's cool, isn't it? Project Asset Inspector. You had the texture manager before, and it helped you to find missing files, missing textures and everything, and replace them. Now we increased that, and we rewrote a lot of stuff, so now we call it the Project Asset Inspector, because now you can find everything. A scene doesn't only have textures, it also has HDR, movie files, sound files, and everything. So now you can search them, replace them, and this small video shows you the main features. Here's a typical scene where you have a lot of files. You can filter them, so you can say, okay, please show me only picture files, or show me movie files, sound files, caches, and so on. Export formats. And of course, we also have a search bar, so you can search for things. And if you activate this filter bar, you just put in the name and boom, there it is. And you can also search by, for example, there are different things you can activate, like file size, and you can search for a file that is, for example, bigger than 50 megabytes, so it only shows the files that are bigger than 50 megabytes. So very easy to find all the files and of course exchange them, or see if it's something is missing, you need to search for it. Okay, you can of course also save the whole scene again when everything is found, all the textures that were missing. And if you select files, you can also only export the selected files with this icon. UV Transform Tool. The UV Transform Tool is for body paint, and it helps you to reshape or resize or move horizontally, vertically your UVs. You just select the UVs and then you activate this function here with this icon. And here's a small video showing it. So you've got these points, and then you can resize proportionally, unproportionally. You can rotate, you can move the pivot and rotate around the pivot. Shear. Yeah, and move horizontally also very precisely if you need to. And so on. Fields. Have you ever used fields? Anybody of you? Oh, please guys, do this. The fields were introduced last year. This is just incredible. The things you can do, and we really put so many great things into this release. Like later on you will see with the field force, the particles, the old particles come to new life, and you can do incredible stuff. I've got great examples. Fields improvements. So, for a better overview and faster workflow, the subfields are now, like in the object manager, in the list, so you see them. If you have a subfield, you directly see it, because sometimes you get a scene from somebody and you're like, why is this happening? There's no field for that, and you don't see it because you have to select another field and then you see it in a tab, and that was sometimes a bit complicated. So now you see everything that is there, even a subfield, and it's just parent and child like you know it from the object manager. Then we have a new mask workflow. Here's the icon. So you can mask parts out. Here's a nice example for that, to create this animation. The normal tag can now get the normal directions from fields. And the new channel convert field can be used to repurpose channels of assigned fields. So but we come later to fields again. This was just the beginning. Character improvements. You already saw the timeline is now really fast, and we've got new weighting improvements, and these are really incredible. I mean, I'm a character guy. I wish to do more in character because I'll just love it, but I don't find the time. When I started, it was release 8.5, and it was really like a pain in the... I'm not supposed to say that. You had to paint the weight for like hours, if not days, and you have to put every joint in there, and then sometimes you did something wrong, and then an arm moved up like this, and you cannot go back, even not with undo, and you're like, why? What's happening? And it was really hard. And then someday we introduced the character builder, and suddenly everything got easy. You choose your template, then you move the points just to the right position. You just drag and drop one object into a field. It takes 1 second, and the character is weighted. 1 second compared to like 3 days. Probably for me, because I'm too stupid. Somebody else who's used to it probably takes 1 day, but still, 1 day, 1 second. So we've got a completely new algorithm, and these are heat map and volumetric. And with each, you can also activate bone glow, a bone glow option. We just had to find a nice name for it, bone glow. So it really depends on your scene, which mode you choose. You can try it out if this or that gives better results. I can already tell you that, for example, volumetric, when you have a part like a character, I also have an example for that later. When you have a character and the arm gets weight, but also the body, because they are very close together, and you don't want that. The volumetric mode fills the arm virtually with water. So it fills it up, fills it up, fills it up, so it cannot come to this point, to the polygons here on this side, because it fills it up and it knows it has to stop here, because here's the joint. So only this gets weighted and not this part, even though it's very close, and that's very cool. So let's see. This is the interface. This is an example. We were kindly provided with this character from TurboSquid. Really nice site. You should go to TurboSquid if you need any model. You find everything there, just literally everything. And here is an example of before and R21. And you see it directly. In most cases, no reweighting anymore. I mean, the weight was there, it worked, but in some cases you had to repaint or resmooth parts. And in R21 it looks like this. And here is an example. The typical thing, like I said before, you have an arm and something gets weighted underneath. So here we use the distance mode, activate bone glow, click on calculate, and now look at the animation. Here deformation is perfect, and look at the animation here. There's not a single part on this character where the weight is off. So I'm really proud of this. I mean, I didn't write it. I'm not a programmer, but I'm still proud, because Mixamo control rig is so cool. Do you know Mixamo from Adobe? Have you ever used it? Motion capture data. You just go to the web page. Here it is, and then you just you save your character as an OBJ, for example, load it into Mixamo. On the Mixamo web page, you can rig it really fast. You just define the pivot for the hip and the arms and wrist and knee and feet, and that's it. And then it calculates for 1 minute, and then you've got a rig character. And then you have hundreds of animations: dancing, shooting, falling on the ground, running, standing around. And then you can export this, and now with R21 you have this animation here, and you can change the animation on top. And that's because the character builder now has the function or the template Mixamo. We reset the bind pose, we create a character object, then we choose the template Mixamo control rig, then we choose the components, and when you're finished, what you have, also when you go to adjust mode, the points already jump into the right position. You don't have to do that as well. You just have to move the knee joint a little bit forward. So Cinema 4D knows how to bend in which direction, because in Mixamo rigs everything is completely straight, and then it doesn't know where to bend. So this is the only thing you have to do. Like I said, you drag and drop the body object into this field, and suddenly it's rigged. And now, here comes the fun part. we still have the animation because the Mixamo rig is underneath. It's still there, and we have our rig on top. And now, look at this, what we can do. We can take any controller now and override the information, for example, the height information. So, click on the hip, move it down, click on the neck joint and rotate it. So it's the same animation, but with your changes. And look at this here. And even here, watch this point. It's stepping on the concrete. It's also animated, and it's very easy. You just put the foot up, set one keyframe, and put it down for the next move, set a keyframe, and then it suddenly recognizes the concrete. And it's still the same animation, so you can really alter the whole thing. And of course, I know you guys have asked yourself, how the hell do these guys look from behind? Here it is. Yeah, we don't want to see that actually. Okay, using the post-morph tag, you can also have a smooth transition between two animations. So you load one animation where it's here the guy is walking, for example, and another animation where the guy is running, and then you just smoothly move the percentage, and that it's you have a smooth transition between those two animations. Very easy. Yeah, very cool thing. Volume enhancements. Again, I have to ask, have you used the volumes of R20? This is my best thing. Even though I love character, this is my best thing, because with the volumes, we introduced it in R20. It's actually volumes to render clouds and stuff, but we use it as a modeling tool. So you just throw objects, and it reads everything. You can put parametric objects in there, polygon objects, splines, hair, everything. Just throw it in, and then they melt together. It's like Boolean operation, and in the end, you get a very cool mesh that is perfect for prototyping and 3D printing, for example. And you can create easily stuff that would have taken like days to model. And of course, we did new stuff in R21 for our volumes. And one thing that it wasn't possible before, if you use the spline, you can see here on the right, for the people that never used volumes, if you put a spline into Volume Builder, then it creates a geometry out of it. So you can define how thick it should be, and now you can also define with this spline gadget the shape along the spline from the start to the end. So if you put this in there, you get this result. So you can choose to be very thin at the beginning, very thick at the end, and so on. We have vertex maps for curvature, and it is automatically created for you. So this is the original model. Then you have both. If you activate the function both, then you have everything that's exposed and everything that's increases. It's like convex, concave. Here you have convex, everything that's outside, and here you have concave. And the thing is that you could paint this and use it for example, for scratches. You can use the vertex map for scratches on the outside, so only the scratches appear where everything is yellow. But to paint this will also take very long, and Volume Builder does it for you. Then we thought, okay, volumes are incredible, but some people not only use it for modeling, they also use it for animation. And it can get really slow because it depends on the voxel size. If you have very small voxels, so the geometry is very smooth, everything can be very slow. So we put in a cache. And this is how it looks like. You just click on cache, and the cache is built on top, and then it caches everything underneath, like in Photoshop with layers. It caches everything underneath, and then you see it's grayed out, so you can no longer change it, only if you free the cache. So you immediately see, okay, this is the cache layer, these are the caches, and then you can put more objects on top, and if it gets slow again, you cache it again. And just if you want to release the cache that is the lowest one, or one in the middle, so you're really free to do anything. Yeah, like I said, The cache layer can be used as a foundation for further adjustments, and here is an animation, and you see it's 6.9. Yeah, it varies very slow. So we cached it, and now I activate the cache, and suddenly you get 60 frames, 67 frames. And this is of course very cool if you do animation. So, vector volumes. The volume builder now can create vectors. Vectors are direction informations. So you can see it here from a sphere. These are the vectors, and you can create it for every object. And of course, the layer-based system of the volume builder is supported here in this case. And we've got 6 filters. We've got vector, smooth, scale, rotate, invert, normalize, and curl. The vector smooth filter creates transitions, and you can see it here clearly. One field, vectors going into this direction, another field, vectors going into that direction, and here smoothing is enabled, and you have a smooth transition between these two directions. Circulations can be created by using the vector curl filter, of course. Yeah, where can this be used? For example, you can use the vector information for normals. Look at this. We've got a sphere. We've got the head of my colleague, Jonas, scanned. And you see the vectors. And if you now put this vector information onto the sphere, you get this. And we have field force. I already talked about this. Field force is so incredible. Look at this. Field force is a new force object, and it works with all sorts of dynamics. With our dynamic system, with our particles, it works with spline dynamics, it works with cloth. So you can really use it with every force in Cinema 4D, and you can use it to create incredible stuff. I've got so many great examples here. So let's have a look. There are 3 velocity types. So this is add to velocity. Particles come out and then they are dragged down by the force field. We have change direction. They come out, immediately change direction. No chance to have their own force to go forward. And set absolute velocity. They come out and then they don't even have the power to go down. So you have this effect here. So here fall off is disabled in this case, and fall off activated. You see the smooth transition to the outside. And you can create stuff like this with the normal particles that have been there forever. And this is how it looks like rendered. It's rendered with hair, by the way. Here you see we've got one linear field into this direction, then we add a spherical field, then we add a random field, and if you want to, of course, in this layer system you can also move the percentage slider, and then there's a fall off to the middle here. And this is a scene my colleague built, Jonas. And he was playing around with this for 1 hour. And I was like, how long will you do this? But I can understand it completely. It's so much fun. Look at this. Internet, you should see these faces. Yeah, it's really a lot of fun to play around with. And another cool example. And you can make particles follow a spline now using a field. And if we put randomness into this as well, it looks like this. And vector volumes can be used in the field force object. And you create crazy stuff like this here, like this structure. And like I said, you can use it with any dynamics in Cinema 4D. So here is normal rigid body dynamics. Here we have spline dynamics. Also something my colleague played around with like forever. Another spline dynamics example. And cloth following a spline. This is actually the moment where you say, ooh. What's more? There you go. Yeah, thinking particles can also use the field force. And can now use any force object. Yeah, another nice example here. And if you haven't tried it out, get Cinema 4D R21 demo version and play around with this. This is really so much fun. Here we have curled noise. And this great example, particles coming, then they go around this typo, and then they're released again. Yeah, and to do this, I just drew 4 splines. Then I made the particles follow the splines. Then I put everything into a volume builder to create the volumes, and also to have smooth transitions between these parts here. So you really can see the single stripes, but you see that they're smoothly coming together. And yeah, at the end, I just put a material on it with subsurface scattering, and I've got this nice looking plant. And another example from one of our beta testers, Tobias. Okay, let's come another time to the point, saving time. You all need to save time. If you can work faster, if your renderings are there faster, you can take another job earlier. So the denoiser really helps you with that. This is the denoiser. You just activate it in the render settings just by clicking on it. And here is one example. You see the noise? This is something you wouldn't send to your client. 1 minute 30. Of course, you can now render it for, I don't know how long it takes, 1 hour, 2 hours, so the noise is gone. Or you can just activate our denoiser. Look at this. 1 minute 32. The faces again, I like it. And here, I put it to an extreme test. I mean, this is ridiculous. This is 5 iterations. Of course, nobody would do that. But I wanted to see how the denoiser works and what it does. So I put 5 iterations in here. Or let it render for 5 iterations. Look at the stones here. You actually don't see anything. There's no picture information. It's more noise than anything. I mean, if you see this now, it's blurry, but look at what kind of information the denoiser still gets out of this image. Another example, actually no picture information after the denoiser, looks like this. I mean, you wouldn't send this to the client either. It's just a test, extreme test for me, because it's too blurry. But it shows the power of this denoiser. And here's something that's also very important. The denoiser just goes over your image and blurs it. It's really an intelligent algorithm. And as you can see here, denoiser disabled, denoiser enabled, you can see there is still a structure. That's because it sees this is no noise pattern. This is the fabric actually. So everything, the noise is taken out, but here where it should be there because it's a material and fabric, it stays. It's not blurred, of course, because it's a denoiser and not a blurrer. Nice, isn't it? No, I don't think you can use it for photos because digital noise is completely different from a photograph, I think. But you test it. I'm right? I'm right. He says I'm right. Hi, Bernd. So, node improvements. There are 8 new nodes. Line, spline mapper, multi-trace ray, cells, area average, blur, cache, and kernel. So, for example, the cells node. With that, you can take a black and white picture and distribute cells, Voronoi cells, so it looks like this. Or this. Or this example. Arbitrary output values are now available and can be defined in the material end node. And that means that you can now use any node as a multi-layer. Not only the whole output, but every single node. And they're just added to your multi-passes in your render settings. And here is an example for that. So this is the beauty pass. This is the brick color on a layer. Then we have the paint and paste color, and we have the mask. And now you can have every single one of them in your post, like Photoshop or After Effects, and you can change everything. Very cool. With R21, the Nodes API is now finally ready to be used by third parties. And that means if you're used to our nodes, then probably over the time, third-party developers like plug-in programmers, renderer that are out there and compatible with Cinema 4D, they use then our node system so you feel home immediately. So it looks like this render or plugin is from Maxon, which is very cool. You want to feel comfortable and not learning another system. The challenge was, of course, with all the different material systems, how can we offer a workflow that does not end up in a mess? Because you start the standard renderer, and then you have materials there that are probably for physical or for ProRender or whatever. And we came up with the idea of node spaces. Depending on the chosen renderer, only nodes which are actually working are available. The standard and physical renderer have 150 plus nodes, ProRender around 70, and third-party renderer will have 90 nodes. By default, the node space will always fit the current renderer. So if there's standard renderer, then you have the node space of the standard and physical, because they're both the same. New node material, you see here, node space, standard, physical, ProRender, third party. One material, but also can have multiple node spaces inside. So when you change the node space, the material changes as well. Example from Jan Ge. Very nice rendering. And all the materials you see here were created with nodes. In R21, ProRender comes with support for node-based materials. So before we had the nodes, the Maxon nodes, only for standard and physical, and now it's fully supported in ProRender. And even though I know that people say, oh, yeah, I've never used nodes, it's complicated, and I can tell you yeah, you have to get into this, but after that it's way easier with nodes to, for example, change stuff. If you have one texture and you want to use it everywhere, you just connect the nodes and just use it once. with the old material system, if you want to exchange in texture, you have to go into every material and every layer and exchange this texture because it's there hundreds of times probably. With the nodes, it's just one node and you just define a line from one node to another. So it's there, already there, and visible, and not going into layer to layer to layer. So it's really more flexible, faster to render, converges faster. Material updates are faster. No baking, less preparing, and every parameter supported. No more grayed out parameters now with R21. Here are the 69 nodes for ProRender. This is the default node setup. And we have an Uber surface for you. Of course, we thought of all of our customers, and we just don't say, okay, here's nodes. There's no longer your workflow that you're familiar with. Just learn nodes. No, we don't do this. We have an Uber surface, and if you don't want to work with nodes, you just create this, and then you have most of the most important parameters to change and to create materials like this and this and this, and they're all there. Of course, you can go in and say edit node, and then you have the node space, and then you can work on the nodes and change them. But if you don't want to work with this, just use these parameters, change them, and you feel home because this is like before. Yeah, different surface types can be mixed using the BSDF mix node. And here another nice example from Jange. And a nice example from my colleague. This is actually a croissant that was bought by him at the bakery directly next at Maxon where we work. And he did photogrammetry, like, I don't know, 80 pictures, something like that. And then he created a 3D model out of that. And then he textured everything also with the nodes. Small adjustments, for example, rendering, independent shader compiling, camera linear motion blur, you see it at the right top. Then diffuse and wireframe render modes, you see them here. If you want to render something without textures that looks like clay, and also, of course, wireframe rendering if you want to see the wires, the wireframe, sorry. Out-of-core texture support for HDR. If you work with GPU renderers, you know everything has to fit into the RAM. And with the last release, we took the textures out, so they no longer have to be in the RAM. So only geometry and HDRs. But HDRs as well can be very, very big. So now out-of-core texture support means that HDRs no longer have to be in the RAM, so you can fill or put in bigger scenes and render them because bigger scenes fit into the RAM of your graphics card. And more multipasses. Yeah, look at this. The volume builder was introduced last year. There are new people here, so I say it again. Volume builder is really cool to model stuff. It's like with it's like Boolean operation. You just throw objects in there and move them, and then you then you take one. I'm missing a word. Then you subtract. That's the word. Okay. I'm back. Then you subtract one object from the other, or you add an object, and they just come together, and they have a smooth transition. It's like they're melting together, and it's such a cool way to model in Cinema 4D because you can do stuff that would take forever or is simply impossible with polygon modeling. So I really love it. It's also incredible for prototyping and 3D printing. You can do really cool stuff with it. It's my favorite feature from R20, and I use it since then every day. I cannot go back to a different version. And now we introduced the VDBs, which are actually for rendering clouds and stuff, as a modeling tool. And now with ProRender, you can also render the volumes. And this is done. The clouds you saw. This is done in ProRender. You see node material presets, and there's the volume. These are the options there. In the volume tag, the material can be assigned, and you can see here you've got smoke and fire, and you can make a lot of changes to get the look you want. And it can also be used for subsurface scattering effects. Okay, look at this. Of course, You can load VDB files, open VDB files from the internet and render them now. But this scene actually was created completely in Cinema 4D. It's a volume, and we added a noise there to get this cloud effect, subtracted the noise from this, and then you can decide where is the fire, when is the death time of the fire, when does the smoke start, and so on. So really cool effects you can create with that. And of course we had to render the rabbit. Everybody knows the rabbit, I think. Looks beautiful. Another nice example from Nicholas Woolrich. Yeah, it's hot shit. Definitely, it's hot shit. Again, Jange. I mean, this is the third time in this presentation. This guy is unbelievable. He's Chinese. He's like 35, looks like 17. And before I had email contact to him and saw a picture of him, I really thought these are like 30 guys. And the company's called Jange because he comes up with a rendering every day. And he's a teacher. I don't know when he sleeps. When does he find the time? We just have a competition, and like 3 competitions, and 3 days later he comes up with 5 renderings. Okay, here's my... I don't know how he does it. But incredible stuff he creates. And these are the volumes he did for this scene in cinema. Ooh, new caps and bevels. I also love this one. I mean, I actually don't have to talk, because if you look at this video, everything is explained. Caps and bevels, we had it before, and I wouldn't say they were bad, but they were. With the new caps and bevels, you can create such a great look for fonts, for example, or splines that you put into an extrude. And there are things that were simply not possible before, because you always had parts when the geometry comes together where it exploded and you had a bad topology. And look at this. Look at the top part where it comes together. It stops and the rest is still building up, and you have a lot of options there, like steps. Or extend shape, so everything moves out in steps. Or curve. And with curve, you get, like a lot of times in Cinema 4D, you get the spline gadget, and you can define the shape. And we have presets for you. There are a few already there, but of course you can also draw a spline, change the shape, and then save it as a preset so you can use it later on, anytime you want. Look at the beautiful shape. I mean, this was just simply not possible. So cool. And here is the new preset. Yeah, another example. A very complicated spline. Don't try this in R20. It won't work. And with R21, if I change the parameter, I animated this actually here. You see this beautiful geometry. And in the end, you can come up with something like this. And this is Viewport. This is OpenGL, by the way. Yeah, caps and bevels. Of course, for fonts as well. And this is also a very nice example. And this is done by my colleague Orestes. And also, this is procedural. It's not fixed. This only can be done with R21 caps and bevels because you have this great topology. The geometry is incredible, so you can create these wrinkles. The old geometry was really horrible, and so you couldn't come up with results like this. And of course, you can also animate the parameters. Yeah, other changes. I mean, there are a lot of changes in this release, and there are so many small things where which are not big features, but are like, I wanted this for years, and this would have saved me so much time. So if you want to look up the whole feature setup of R21, go to a webpage, you find a full list there. We have a new license server. It's only 45 megabytes. I already told you in the beginning that you can free license. It's very easy. There are a lot of new people here, so I tell it again. You can free licenses, so if you have a license at home and you're traveling, you're at a friend, you're at a different company or whatever, and you forgot to deactivate your license, and you want to use Cinema 4D, you just go into your phone, you log in, and then you say free license and activate it on the new computer. You don't have to go home. This is really cool. Yeah, can be maintained from everywhere. Or smaller things like this here. Easy and fast color swapping. Hold shift and swap the color. And not only in one material, also from one material to another. Align to splines. So position is no longer only from 0 to 100%. You can go even further to create a very long animation. Yeah, and the spline UIs have two new functions, double and symmetrize. Double just doubles the shape you just created. And symmetrize does the same. It doubles it, but it mirrors it as well, yeah. The small things that make your life easier in your everyday Cinema 4D work. And look at this. I mean, we're talking about the new core that we're working on for years now. The new core is very important to Maxon. It's a lot of work, but it will make Cinema 4D later on way easier. For us, it's way easier to implement stuff, and with every release from the old core, everything comes to the new core. And with this release, you see that these are the functions that made it into the new core. And there are a lot of other changes. I cannot read all of these. Like I said, go to a web page and look the features up. Probably there's something even for you that I didn't show here today. I would like to say thank you. Thanks for coming, and thanks for listening.